want to emphasize that this is not a religion. It is what we would call a world truth, and it is at the core of all Western mystery traditions and all Western religions and universal thoughts. The tree of life is not an object of worship, as many symbols are. It's not a doctrine of faith, but it is a message, a practical wisdom belonging to searchers for truth. So visually and literally, it's a way of life and living, a way of thinking, a way of relating, a way of self-discovery and sharing. The understanding of the tree gives you insight into who you are. It shows conflicts. It shows imbalances in your life and in your relationships. And whatever your belief and religions are, it provides a plan for your spiritual future. That Malkutian people are down to earth and very sensible. In a way, they are not very interested in anything spiritual, and I'm generalizing now. Malkutian people are interested in the here and now and what they can get out of life. So it stands it makes sense that these kind of people, for example, would like to accumulate things because that's how they feel safe. So in Malkut, in life, Malkut manifests as countries with, number one, basic living conditions. In other words, where people have to scratch for their living, where their whole lives is composed of looking for a way to exist. They don't have time to do spiritual stuff. In fact, they're not even thinking about God because it's just too hard. They're scratching in the ground for some food. In life, Malkut manifests, when we're talking about food, as comfort food. Malkutian food is that heavy food that makes you feel satisfied. So it's stews, or it's potato, or it's bread. It's basic stuff of life. Occupations, Malkutian occupations will be the people who are working with their hands. Not so much as, not in very precise professions, but people like potters, they're getting their hands dirty with the clay, gardeners, carpenters, builders, accountants, because Malkut is all about the here and now and physical collections. So businessmen are very Malkutian.
Holds the potential of all form, Bina says that we have to recognize that there is the dark and the light in everything. And the other goddesses that could appear in this Sephirah are any goddesses that weave the thread of life. So the fates in the Greek mythology and in the Roman mythology, because in Bina is held memories of past. It holds all the memories of past lives, of future lives. If we want to mix metaphors, we would call it the place where the Akashic records are held. It has all the plans for a human life.
Imparts direction or development of the intellect. It is the path of instruction on mental levels. It's said to be the path of the relationship between the leader and the led, because on this path are all analogies of the first struggles towards civilization by man and the formation of the family and the tribe and the nation. So this path says once we have pulled ourselves out of the swamp, which is like the 32nd path, on this path we learn to communicate. Remember, Hod is about Mercury, which is communication. And it has a very, very important symbol on this path, and that is the symbol of fire. So one of the beginnings of civilization can be linked to the discovery and the harnessing of fire. Because until human beings learned how to manage that element, they were very much one for one. As soon as fire was built, people started gathering around the fire. As soon as people started gathering around the fire, groups were formed. As soon as groups were formed, leaders started to emerge. And there we had the beginning of the family, the tribe, the community, the culture. Christianity is a solitary path. When we are walking it or working it, we often don't feel the need for a lot of noise around us. And you know that when you are doing any kind of important work on yourself, spiritual work, or even not spiritual work, any external distraction doesn't help. There's a strong pull to withdraw. The danger on this path is that you could become too introverted. So there is that one thing that you got to be careful of, that you withdraw too much. So people on this path can be introverted, can feel like they walk a different road, hopefully are humble and are not interested in standing center stage. Those last two, we would presume that they have progressed somewhat on the path. Remember, if this is your life path and you haven't actually learned its lessons, you're going to hate being alone. You're going to hate feeling different. You're not going to be humble, and you will probably want to make a lot of noise. The further you walk along the path, the more the path acts in you. We say that we are born in Malkut and we go to God in Keter. That's the tree of our lifetime. The easiest way to explain this path is to talk about the process of leaving our body. So there have been reports ad infinitum by people who have had what they call near-death experiences, and everybody says the same thing. The scientists try and explain it by saying that when the brain is starved of oxygen, people see bright lights. Maybe that makes them feel better. But the fact that a lot of people who die and then come back say they see bright lights and they see figures standing in the light always makes me feel that death is not the end. So if we imagine that Bina is where we are holding on desperately to our physical form, we are in fact dying. If we are prepared to let go, leaving our body, it's the process of walking along this path towards Chokhmah. In Chokhmah, there is enormous energy, if you remember, enormous light. So we walk down the dark passage towards the enormous light that is held in Chokhmah. And there we will see whatever we imagine that we will see. In esoteric teachings, we're always taught that, I suppose it's a way to get us to actually leave our bodies. We will see what we expect to see when we die. So if we were brought up in a terribly religious family and we believe that we have sinned and we believe we will go to hell, I'm prepared to bet you that when we walk down this path, standing there in the light will be whatever we imagine the devil to be, a little man with a pitchfork maybe and horns in his head. But if we believe that we will be greeted by Great Aunt Sally and the dog and the cat, they will be standing there. And the reason for that is that we have to have an incentive to leave the physical. Sometimes human beings hang on too long to their bodies in the process of dying, and they need to let go and walk through this doorway to the next stage of life, which is who knows what. And that's the other thing that esoteric teachings teach us. We don't know what happens after this way station. We have no idea what will come afterwards. That the paths that reach Keter, the high priestess, the fool, and the magician, or 13, 12, and 11, have to be approached with a correct perspective. We know that the experience of Keter is total annihilation of self as we know it. So how on earth, or how in God's name, can we really expect to understand these paths? And Dion Fortune says, just as an extension of this quote here, she says that in trying to understand these paths, we are like little children trying to spell God. So the only way to really understand these true mysteries is to say, as above, so below, and to look at below as a true reflection of above. Now, this fool, many tarot teachers believe that this is the most profound card of all the tarot. It signifies the innocence of the spirit coming forth into manifestation, completely inexperienced, yet with the wisdom of the divine behind it. It is that first step. For example, let's talk about when a baby is born. Hypothetically, that baby's been resting in the mother's stomach, remembering all that came before and remembering all that's coming in the future, and at that moment of birth forgets everything. But it has no remembrance of pain or disappointment. So at that first moment of birth, it only expects everything to be perfect, as the fool does. The fool has no experience, no baggage yet of disappointment, darkness, unhappiness. Just looks straight up at God and says, well, I don't understand the idea of falling and hurting myself. So I'm just going to jump. I don't know that if I jump into the sea I might drown. I haven't learnt that yet. And as the fool moves further and further away from this path, it starts learning by experiment, by example, and that bag on its back starts getting heavier and heavier. When we're climbing the tree, when we're getting to the top of our journey, by now we have shed all our baggage. We have disassociated from ego. All we want to do now is go home. And that's why the fool is looking up. That dog is that pure, absolute instinct that says jump. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Just jump.